When I appeared in front of the guests at my 70th birthday party with a purple eye, everyone was in shock. The silence was absolute. The conversations died, and the bourbon glasses froze in the air. I could feel each pair of fixed eyes on my face, on the purple swelling around my left eye, in the bruise that no makeup could hide. Then my son Robert came forward and declared with a clear and proud voice, it was my wife who taught him his place so that he could learn to respect. Valerie, my daughter-in-law, straightened her shoulders to his side, satisfied with that little poisonous smile shining on her lips. She looked at me as if I were garbage, as if I were nothing. It was then that my brother Michael approached Robert, and what he said changed everything. That day I lost my son, but I also found myself again. Let me tell you how I got to that moment of public humiliation, how I went from being a beloved father to becoming an enemy in my own house. Because this did not start with physical aggression. It started much earlier with soft words and false smiles, with poison disguised as concern. 3 years ago, when my wife Eleanor died, the world lost its color. Eleanor, my 42-year-old companion, left in silence a cold winter morning, a sudden heart attack. I didn't even have time to say goodbye. One morning she was by my side, warm under the sheets, and the next she was cold, gone forever. The pain was so intense that I thought I would drown in it. I cried in the shower so that Robert would not hear me. I cried while cooking. I cried looking at the empty side of the bed. But I had to be strong. Robert needed me. He had also lost his mother. The house where we lived was our fortress, a beautiful property that Eleanor and I had bought when Robert was just a boy. 2 floors, a large garden, large windows that let in the early morning sun. Eleanor had left it to me in my name. "It's yours, Frank," she had told me months before she died, as if she had foreseen something. "Don't let anyone take away what we built together." We signed the papers, and everything was in order. I was the legal owner of that house, of those memories in every corner where I had raised my son. Robert lived with me. After his mother's death, he decided to stay. "I'm not going to leave you alone, Dad," he said to me while we had breakfast, pot coffee. He worked at a construction company, Reformation Corp. He left early, came back tired, but always with a smile for me. We had dinner together. We watched movies on Sundays. We talked about Eleanor, about memories, about how much we missed her. The pain was more bearable when it was shared. I cooked his favorite dishes, turkey meatloaf, mashed potatoes, freshly baked biscuits as he liked. He fixed the things that broke in the house. We were a team. We were family. I thought it would be like this forever. Then Valerie arrived. Valerie, he met her at a business fair. She was an event coordinator, elegant, self-confident, with that type of polished beauty that seems to have come out of a fashion magazine. Dark hair, always perfectly combed, impeccable nails, designer clothes. The first time he brought her home, she gave me a blindingly white smile and a hug that seemed calculated, measured to the millimeter. "Mr. Frank," she told me in a sweet voice, "Robert talks so much about you. It is a pleasure to meet the man who raised such a wonderful son." I wanted to believe her. I wanted to think she was sincere. I prepared a special dinner that night. Roast chicken with all the herbs that Robert loved, fresh salad, freshly made hot biscuits. Valerie ate little, pushing the food on the plate while making comments about carbohydrates and calories. "I almost never eat biscuits," she said, looking at the biscuits with something similar to contempt. "We need to take care of each other, don't you think?" She smiled, but there was something sharp in that smile, something that made me feel uncomfortable. For the next few months, Valerie became part of our lives. She came to dinner 2 or 3 times a week, always polite, always smiling. But I began to notice little things. The way she looked at the house, as if she were evaluating it. Comments that seemed innocent, but had hidden clues. "This room is very classic," she said, touching the furniture that Eleanor and I had chosen together. "I bet they are 30 years old, right? There are such modern styles now." Or when I saw the family photos on the wall, "How nice that he keeps so many memories of the past, Frank." Although sometimes clinging so much to yesterday does not leave room for tomorrow. Robert did not notice anything. He was in love, blind. When I tried to mention something, he defended me, but with a condescending smile. "Dad, Valerie just wants to help. She is used to organizing spaces. It is her job." And I was silent. I did not want to be that father-in-law, that bitter man who does not accept his son's partner. So I swallowed my doubts and smiled. They got married 6 months later. A small but elegant ceremony in the Botanical Garden of Atlanta, Georgia. Valerie organized everything. I barely participated. "Don't worry, Mr. Frank," she told me. "I'll take care of everything. You just relax and enjoy." The day of his wedding, while I saw them exchange vows, I felt a knot in my stomach. Eleanor was missing. She would have known what to say. She would have seen what I was starting to see. After the honeymoon, Valerie moved in. "It is temporary, Dad," Robert explained to me. "Only until we find our own place." I accepted it. He was my son. I would not deny him a roof. But temporary became a month, then 2, then 6. And with each passing day, Valerie occupied more space. She reorganized the kitchen. She changed the curtains of the dining room. She moved the furniture in the living room. "We need to feel at home, Frank," she told me with a soft smile. And I let her do it because I did not want problems. But then the meetings began. Valerie invited friends, colleagues, people I did not know. She filled the room. They laughed loudly. They drank until late. And when I appeared, the atmosphere changed. The conversation stopped. They looked at me as if I were an intruder in my own house. "Dad, don't you want to rest?" Robert told me softly. "We take care of everything down here." And I went up to my room feeling displaced, invisible, a load. Have you ever felt strange in your own house? Have you ever seen someone take your space little by little and not being able to do anything to stop it? I was living a silent nightmare, and I didn't even know it. The months passed, and the house stopped being mine. Not legally, not on paper, but in every detail that mattered. Valerie redecorated without asking permission. One day I got home, and the cream-colored curtains that Eleanor and I had chosen were no longer there. Instead, they hung minimalist gray fabrics that made the room seem cold, impersonal. "The other one was very old-fashioned, Frank," explained Valerie, while folding the old curtains in a box. "These are more elegant, more current. You will get used to it." But I didn't want to get used to it. I wanted my curtains. I wanted my house. I wanted someone to ask me before changing the things that Eleanor and I had built together. Robert worked more and more hours. He left before dawn and returned after 9 o'clock at night. We ate separately, I in the kitchen, they in the dining room with the door closed. I could hear their laughter, their private conversations. But I was no longer part of it. I was no longer part of my son's life. When I tried to talk to him, he was always tired, distracted, looking at his phone. "We'll talk later, Dad," he said to me without raising his eyes. "Right now, I have to check some emails." And I was left with words stuck in my throat. Valerie began to make more direct comments. She no longer bothered to disguise her insults with sweetness. One afternoon, while she was cooking, she entered the kitchen and wrinkled her nose. "Frank, you always cook with so much butter." The smell gets all over the house, she said, leaving an aromatic candle on the table. Use this later, please. Tomorrow my friends are coming and I don't want you to smell like old people's food. Old people's food. That's what she said to the stew he was preparing. The same recipe that Robert had loved all his life. I started to cook less, to lock myself more in my room. The house was hostile. Each space had Valerie's mark, her magazines on the center table, her shoes at the entrance, her expensive perfume floating in the air. I was becoming invisible, a ghost in my own house. And the worst thing was that Robert didn't see or didn't want to see. One night I went down for water. It was past 11 o'clock. I thought everyone was sleeping, but I heard voices in the study. The door was half open. I approached without making a sound. Valerie was talking to Robert, her voice low but intense. We can't go on like this, love. This house is too big for 3 people and your father is already older. Wouldn't it be better if he went to live in a smaller place? Easier to manage for him. There are residences for older adults, very nice, with people his age. He would be accompanied, happy. My heart stopped. Robert remained silent for a moment, which seemed eternal. Then he sighed. I don't know, Valerie. He's my dad. I can't just throw him out. Valerie laughed softly. It's not about throwing him out, my love. It's about all of us having our space. Think about it. We could have this house just for us. Start our family. Don't you want that? I walked away before hearing Robert's answer. I went up the stairs with trembling legs. I locked myself in my room. And I cried in silence, with my face buried in the pillow, so that they wouldn't hear me. They wanted to get rid of me. They wanted my house, the house that Eleanor had left me, the house where I had raised my son. And Robert was considering it. My own son was thinking of getting rid of me as if it were an old piece of furniture that no longer matched the new decoration. The following days were tense. I couldn't look at Valerie without feeling nauseous. She knew it. I could see it in her eyes, in the way she smiled at me with that calm superiority. She knew she had heard, and she didn't care. In fact, she seemed to enjoy it. It began to be more territorial. Frank, could I knock before entering the room? Sometimes we have private conversations. Oh, Frank. Better not use the washing machine after 7 o'clock. The noise bothers us when we are watching TV. The house had rules now. Rules that I hadn't made. Rules that made me an unwanted guest. I tried to talk to Robert. One morning I grabbed him before he went to work. Son, I need to talk to you. He was checking his wallet, in a hurry as always. What's wrong, Dad? I took a deep breath. I feel that Valerie and I are not getting along. I feel that I am no longer welcome here. Robert frowned. Dad, don't say that. This is your house. But he said it automatically, without conviction, like someone repeating a memorized sentence. So, why do I feel that I have to ask for permission for everything? Why do I feel that I am a nuisance? Robert passed his hand over his hair, uncomfortable. It's just that Valerie is used to having her space. It's nothing personal. Just try to be more flexible, okay? For me, please. And she left. She left me standing there without the words of defense that never arrived. That night, Valerie organized another dinner. 6 people arrived, occupied the dining room, noisy and happy. I was in the kitchen, preparing tea. When one of Valerie's friends came in, she looked at me with surprise. Oh, hello. I didn't know there was someone else here. Before I could answer, Valerie appeared behind her. Ah, he is Frank, Robert's father. He lives here. The way he said it. He lives here, as if he were a tenant. as if it were not my house. The friend was polite and left. I heard the laughter in the dining room. I stayed in my own kitchen feeling small, humiliated, invisible. Weeks passed. Valerie began to talk about remodeling. "This kitchen is so outdated," she told Robert while I was there, as if he could not hear her. "We should modernize it. Change the cabinets. Put an island in the center." Do you know how much a property is revalued with a remodeled kitchen? We could invest about $300,000 and recover the double if we ever sell. "Sell," he said. "Sell, as if the house were his, as if I did not exist." Then my birthday came. 70 years. Robert suggested having a party. "You deserve to celebrate, Dad," he said to me with a smile that reminded me of the child he had been. For a moment I felt hope. Maybe things could improve. Maybe I still mattered. Valerie took care of everything. She invited relatives, friends, neighbors. She decorated the room with silver balloons and garlands. She prepared a table with elegant snacks. From the outside, everything seemed perfect. But I felt a strange tension in the air. Something was wrong. The morning of my birthday, I went down for coffee. Valerie was in the kitchen talking on the phone. When she saw me, she abruptly cut the call. "Good morning, Frank?" Her tone was cold. I served coffee in silence. She stood there, looking at me with an expression that I could not decipher. "Do you know what day it is today?" I tried to break the ice. "Yes, your birthday." Silence. "And also the day you should make important decisions about your future." My hand stopped with the cup halfway. "What do you mean?" Valerie crossed her arms. "Robert and I have been talking. We need this house, Frank. We want to form a family. We need space, privacy. And you need a more appropriate place for your age." I felt that the ground was moving under my feet. "This is my house, Valerie." She smiled. That little poisoned smile. "For now." I did not know what to answer. I went to my room with my heart racing. I sat on the edge of the bed, trembling. What was going on? How did I get here? I looked at the photos in my desk. Eleanor and I on our wedding day, Robert baby, our happy family. And now everything was falling apart. That afternoon, I dressed up for my own party, feeling a huge weight on my chest. I put on the bone-color suit I bought especially for the occasion. I applied makeup carefully, trying to hide the dark circles, the marks of insomnia and anguish. But when I looked in the mirror, I saw a tired man. A man who was losing the battle in his own house. I took a deep breath. I had to go down. The guests would arrive soon. I could not hide in my room on my birthday. I went down the stairs slowly. The room was transformed. Valerie had done an impeccable job. Everything looked elegant, sophisticated, perfect. But it did not look like my party. It looked like the event of another person. The first guests began to arrive. My brother Michael was one of the first. He hugged me tight and whispered in my ear, "Is everything okay? You look pale." I forced a smile. "I'm fine, just a little tired." He looked at me with concern, but did not insist. More people arrived. Cousins, friends of years, neighbors. They all congratulated me. They hugged me. They wished me the best. For a moment, surrounded by people who loved me, I almost forgot the tension I was experiencing. Valerie moved among the guests like the perfect hostess, smiling, charming, attentive. Robert was next to her, proud of his wife. I watched them from a distance, feeling as if I was seeing the life of another person. My own party, and I was a spectator. Valerie approached at one point with 2 glasses of bourbon in her hands, offering me one. "Happy birthday, Frank," she said with a smile that no longer deceived me. I took the glass out of courtesy. "Thank you for organizing all this." She bowed her head. "It was the least I could do." After all, soon this house will be completely ours, and we want to start with the right foot. She said in a low voice, just for me, while others talked around us. It was a threat disguised as courtesy. I needed air. I apologized and went up to the second floor. I went into the bathroom and closed the door. I leaned on the sink, breathing with difficulty. I had to calm down. I couldn't ruin my own party with a panic attack. I poured cold water on my wrists. I took a deep breath. 1, 2, 3 times. 3. When I felt more stable, I left the bathroom. And then I saw her. Valerie was in the corridor in front of my bedroom door. She had my jewelry in her hands. My jewelry? The small wooden chest where I kept the few pieces that Eleanor had given me over the years. "What are you doing?" I asked with a trembling voice. Valerie turned without a trace of guilt on her face. "I was just looking. These jewels are very old, aren't they? They must be worth something." I walked towards her and snatched the jewelry from her hands. "You have no right to touch my things." She laughed, a soft and despicable laugh. "Calm down, Frank. I wasn't going to steal them. Although, with what they are worth, they could help pay for part of the remodeling of the kitchen." I felt the rage rising through my throat like lava. "Get out of my room!" Valerie took a step towards me. We were centimeters apart. "This is not your room. This is our house. And the sooner you understand it, the better for everyone." Something broke inside me. All the accumulated humiliation, all the forced silence, all the invisibility that I had endured for months. Suddenly, it exploded. This house is mine. It is in my name. Eleanor left it to me, and you have no right to anything. The words came out with more force than I expected. Valerie closed her eyes. Her face changed. The mask of education fell. And I saw something ugly, something cruel underneath. "You are a ridiculous old man, attached to the past. Robert no longer needs you. I am his family now, and we are going to get this house with or without his permission." I should have stayed quiet. I should have gone down the stairs and forgotten. But I couldn't. "Get out!" I knocked on the door. Valerie looked at me with pure hatred. Then, without warning, she pushed me. It was not a strong push, but I didn't expect it. I lost my balance. My hip hit the edge of the bed. I tried to hold on to something, but my hand slipped. I fell to the side. My head hit the corner of the desk. The pain was instantaneous, acute, blinding. I took my hand to my eye and felt the humidity. Valerie stood there, looking at me on the floor. For a second, I saw something like fear in her eyes, but she quickly composed herself. "He stumbled alone," she said with a firm voice. "He is old and clumsy. He fell." She looked at me for a few more seconds, and then she left the room, closing the door behind her. I stayed there on the floor, touching the eye that began to swell. The physical pain was nothing compared to the humiliation, the impotence, the horror of what had just happened. I don't know how long I stayed there. Maybe 5 minutes, maybe 10. I finally got up. I looked at myself in the mirror. The skin around my eye was already turning purple. There was a small cut on my eyebrow. The blood had left a thin line on my cheek. I cleaned myself with a towel. I tried to cover it with makeup, but it was useless. The bruise was very obvious. Downstairs, I could hear music, laughter, conversations. My party continued as if nothing had happened, and I was up here bleeding, injured, broken. I thought about not going down, about staying locked up, about waiting for everyone to leave. But then I heard Robert's voice calling me. "Dad, come, let's cut the cake." I couldn't hide. It was my birthday. I had to face what had happened. So I went down slowly. Each step was an effort. When I got to the last one, the conversation stopped. One by one, the guests turned to see me. I saw their faces change. Surprise, horror, confusion. Silence fell like a slab. Robert was the first to speak, but not with concern, not with alarm. He took a step forward and said with a clear, almost proud voice, "It was my wife who taught him his place, so that he could learn to respect." Words fell like bombs in the middle of the silence. Valerie straightened her shoulders to his side, satisfied, looking at me with those cold, victorious eyes. The guests were motionless. Nobody knew what to say. Nobody knew what to do. And I, standing there in front of everyone, humiliated in the most horrible way I could imagine. My own son, justifying the violence against me. My own son, choosing her over me. Then Michael took a step among the people. His face was red with fury. He walked straight towards Robert and looked at him with an intensity he had never seen before. What kind of man allows his wife to attack his own father and then celebrates it in front of everyone? He said in a low voice, but full of contempt. Robert became pale. "Uncle, it's not what it seems." Michael interrupted him. "Your mother would be ashamed of you." The silence that followed was devastating. Robert opened his mouth, but there was no sound. Valerie tried to take his arm, but Michael looked at her. "And you? You came into this family with lies. We are all seeing it." Some guests began to murmur. Others looked at the uncomfortable floor. A cousin approached me. "Frank, are you okay? Do you need us to call someone?" I nodded. Tears began to cloud my sight. But I was not going to cry. Not there. Not in front of them. Michael took my arm gently. "Let's go upstairs. I'm going to clean that wound." But before I could move, Valerie spoke. Her voice sounded sharp, desperate. "He provoked me. He insulted me. I was just defending myself." Michael turned to her. "Liar." The word was floating in the air. Robert finally reacted. He stood between Michael and Valerie, protecting her as if she were the victim. "Uncle, that's enough. You don't know what happened." Michael laughed bitterly. "I don't know? I see your father with a purple eye and you defending the one who attacked him. I know exactly what happened here." More guests began to withdraw. Some said goodbye with grief. Others simply left without saying anything. The party was crumbling. My birthday had become a public nightmare. A senior lady, a friend of my late wife, approached before leaving. She took my hand and whispered to me, "Eleanor would never have allowed this. Take care, Frank." And she left, leaving me with those words engraved in my heart. Michael took me to the kitchen, closed the door, sat me down in a chair, and began to carefully examine my eye. "This needs ice," he said as he opened the freezer. He wrapped ice cubes in a clean cloth and gently pressed it against my face. The cold made me tremble, but the pain began to calm down a bit. "How did it happen?" Michael asked in a controlled voice, although he could see the fury contained in his eyes. I told him everything. The jewelry, the argument, the push, the fall. As he spoke, I saw his jaw tighten more and more. "This can't go on like this," he said when I finished. "This house is yours, legally yours. She has no right to anything." I dried up the tears that had begun to fall without permission. But Robert, he is on her side, is on her. He didn't even ask if I was okay. He just defended her. Michael closed his fists. Robert is blind, but he will wake up. And when he wakes up, he will regret it. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to think that my son would be the man I had raised again. But something inside me had broken that night. Something that perhaps would never be repaired. The kitchen door opened suddenly. Robert entered with Valerie, stepping on her heels. "Dad, we need to talk," he said in a serious tone. Michael got up, interfering. "Don't come near him." Robert looked at him with frustration. "He's my dad. I have a right to talk to him." Michael didn't move. "You lost that right when you let your wife attack him and humiliated him in front of everyone." Valerie intervened, her voice sharp and defensive. "It was an accident. He tripped. I didn't touch him." I looked at her. She was lying shamelessly, without a trace of remorse on her face. "You pushed me," I said with a trembling but firm voice. "You pushed me and left me lying on the floor as if I were garbage." Valerie nodded her head, false tears beginning to form in her eyes. "Robert, he's lying. He's trying to separate us. He's jealous of what we have." It was incredible. He was inverting the roles, becoming the victim. And Robert looked at her with concern, as if he really believed that she was the one who needed protection. "Frank has always been difficult," Valerie continued with a broken voice. "Since the day he met me, he treated me badly. He made me feel like I didn't belong here. I just want peace. I want us to be a family." Every word was a stab. He was building a narrative where I was the villain and she the innocent victim, and Robert was buying the whole story. "Dad," he said, turning to me, "maybe you should. Maybe you need to rest. You're stressed, confused." Confused? He was saying confused to me as if I were crazy, as if I had made it all up. Michael exploded. "Are you listening, Robert? Your dad has a purple eye." "A purple eye? And you're trying to convince him that he's confused?" Robert rubbed his hands on his hair, overwhelmed. "I don't know what to believe. I wasn't there. I didn't see what happened." Valerie hung herself from his arm, writhing against his shoulder. "Frank hates me. He never accepted me. Now he's making things up to kick me out of the house." It was a masterful performance, and it was working. I got up from the chair. The ice fell to the floor. I looked my son in the eye. "Robert, I'm your father. I raised you solely after your mother died. I gave you everything I had. I unconditionally loved you, and now you're calling me a liar to protect a woman who attacked me." My voice broke in the last word. Robert looked away. He couldn't hold my gaze, and at that moment I knew I had lost him. Maybe not forever, but at that moment Valerie had won. "I want you to leave," I said with all the dignity I could gather. "This is my house. I want you to pack your bags and leave." Valerie instantly stopped crying. Her face hardened. "This house is too big for you alone. You need help. You need supervision." The word supervision sounded like poison. Michael took a step forward. "The only one who needs to leave is you. Frank is the legal owner of this property. He can leave voluntarily, or we can call the police and force him out." Robert finally spoke, and his words destroyed me. "We're not leaving. This house should be mine. Mom built it for our family, for me. It's not fair that Dad has everything when I need to form my own family." There was the truth. He didn't care about my well-being. He didn't care about being attacked. He cared about the house, the property, the money. Valerie had put this idea in his head, and now she repeated it as if it were hers. "Your mother left me this house because she trusted that I would take care of it," I said with a trembling voice. "Because she knew it was my refuge, my safety, and you want to take it away from me." Robert didn't answer. Valerie did. "Frank needs to be realistic. He's old. How many more years is he going to live here? 10, maybe 15 if he's lucky. We're young. We need this space now. We can take care of him somewhere else, a more appropriate place. Every word was calculated. Cold, ruthless. Michael took out his phone. I'm going to call the police right now. Robert became pale. Uncle, don't do that. I'm your nephew. Michael looked at him with deep disappointment. And he's my brother, and you're destroying him for a woman who only wants your money. Valerie laughed. His money? Robert doesn't have money. Everything is in his name. She pointed at me with contempt. That's why we're here. That's why we need him to understand that he's not alone in this anymore. The kitchen door opened again. It was Mr. Edward Peterson, the family's lawyer. He had been a close friend of Eleanor's and had written her will. Apparently someone had called him during the chaos of the party. He entered with a folder in his hand, looking at the scene seriously. Good evening. I found out there were problems here. His presence immediately changed the atmosphere. Valerie became tense. Robert seemed confused. Michael sighed with relief. Edward, it's good that you're here, said Michael. We need to clarify some things about the property of this house. The lawyer sat down, opened the folder, and took out an envelope. Coincidentally, I brought the documents. I thought we might need them. He looked at Robert and Valerie. I think there's some confusion about the legal situation of this property. Valerie straightened her back, trying to regain her composure. There's no confusion. We all know the house is under Frank's name, but Robert is his son, the only heir. Eventually, it will be his. Edward looked at her with neutral expression, but his eyes were sharp. That's not exactly correct. He opened the envelope and took out several documents. Eleanor's will has certain specific clauses. My heart began to beat faster. Clauses? Eleanor had never mentioned anything like that to me. The lawyer continued. The house was left to Frank with absolute property, but there is a protection clause. Robert frowned. What does that mean? Edward looked at me briefly, as if asking for permission. I insisted. I needed to know. Everyone needed to know. It means that if Frank is pressured, coerced, or forced to leave the property by any member of the family, the house does not go to the hands of the direct heirs. Instead, it will be completely donated to a specific charitable organization in the will, the Living Hope Foundation. The silence that followed was absolute. Valerie became pale. Robert opened his mouth, but no sound came out. The words of the lawyer were floating in the air like a sentence. Valerie was the first to react. That is ridiculous. It cannot be legal. Edward looked at her calmly, professionally. It is perfectly legal. Mr. Eleanor made her intentions very clear. She wanted to protect her husband from any type of family pressure after his death. She took out another document from the folder. Here is the exact clause. If Frank is forced to sell, donate, or leave the property, it goes to the Living Hope Foundation. Robert would not inherit anything at all. Robert collapsed in a chair. His face had lost all color. Mom did this. It was not a question. It was a shocking statement. Edward agreed. His mother was a wise woman. She had seen many cases of families destroyed by inheritance. She wanted to ensure that Frank had a safe place until the end of his days, without pressure, without manipulation. He looked directly at Valerie when he said the last word. Michael turned to Valerie with contempt. Then, all this time, he said, looking at Valerie with disdain, all this plan to get my brother out of his house, all the humiliations, the contempt, today's push, everything was in vain because they were never going to get this house. Valerie turned back as if she had been slapped. I had no plan. But her voice sounded empty. We all knew the truth. Now everything was clear. The remodelings I wanted to do, the comments about the value of the property, the conversations I had heard about residences for older adults, everything had been a calculated strategy to get me out of my own house. Robert got up slowly. He looked at me. He really looked at me for the first time in months. I saw confusion in his eyes. I saw that shame began to appear. Dad, I didn't know anything about this clause. I looked at him, feeling a deep pain in my chest. But you knew I felt bad. You knew I felt displaced in my own house, and you didn't do anything. You chose to believe her instead of me. Robert opened his mouth to answer, but the words didn't come out. What could he say? It was all true. Everything was true. Valerie changed tactics. Her eyes were filled with tears again. Robert, love, you have to believe me. I didn't know anything about this. I just wanted us to have our own space. I wanted us to be happy. He hung himself from his arm desperately. Don't leave me, please. We're in this together. But Robert got rid of her arm. Something had changed in his expression. The fog began to rise. How long have you been planning this? He asked with a dangerously low voice. Valerie nodded. Don't plan anything. You're misinterpreting everything. Edward intervened again. There's one more thing they need to know. He pulled out another document. 3 weeks ago, someone requested a professional evaluation of this property. The appraiser contacted the office because he noticed that the name in the request didn't match that of the registered owner. He looked at Valerie. The request was made by Valerie Stone. She paid $3,000 for a complete evaluation of the house, including projections of future value if certain remodels were made. The silence was deafening. Robert looked at his wife as if she were a stranger. Also, Edward continued, we received a request 2 weeks ago asking about legal processes to declare an elderly person incapable of managing their own property. My heart stopped. Incapable. They had tried to declare me incapable. The request came from the same telephone number registered under the name of Valerie Stone. Edward closed the folder. We didn't proceed with any information, of course, but it was registered. Valerie went back until she was against the wall. That's a lie. They're making all this up to put you against me. Robert looked at her angrily in the eyes. You tried to declare my dad incapable. You tried to take his house away using the law. Valerie was shuddering now. But they were tears of panic, not sadness. I was just investigating options. I wasn't going to do anything. I just wanted to know what was possible. Robert rubbed his hands on his face. My God, what have I done? What have you turned me into? He looked at her with horror, as if he could finally see what we had all seen from the beginning. Michael put a hand on my shoulder. Frank, do you want them to leave tonight? I looked at Robert, my son, the child I had raised, the man he had become, and the one I no longer recognized. Part of me wanted to scream at him. I wanted to throw him out of the house immediately. But another part, the part that had been a father for so long, still felt love for him. A broken love. But love after all. Robert can stay tonight, I said with a tired voice. But she's leaving now. Valerie opened her eyes in shock. You can't do that. I'm her husband. I looked at her directly. This is my house, and I want her out of it. Robert didn't defend her this time. He remained silent, looking at the floor. Reality had finally hit him. Edward spoke in a professional tone. Mr. Valerie, I suggest you pack your personal belongings and leave. If you refuse, I can call the authorities. Valerie looked at us all with pure hatred. There were no tears anymore, only rage. This is not going to stay that way, she said in a poisonous voice. "I have rights. I'm Robert's wife. This house will eventually be mine too." Michael took a step towards her. "Didn't you hear anything the lawyer said? This house will never be yours. Never. And if you keep pressuring, if you keep trying to force Frank to leave, the house will go to charity, and neither you nor Robert will see a single dollar." Valerie squeezed her teeth. She looked at Robert one last time. "Are you going to let them kick me out like this? Are you going to choose him over me?" Robert raised his eyes. They were red. "I think you chose a long time ago. You chose this house instead of me, instead of us." His voice sounded broken. Valerie laughed bitterly. "You are an idiot, a weak idiot who will never get out of Daddy's skirts." She grabbed the bag he had left in the kitchen and left, slamming the door. The sound resounded throughout the house. We were silent for a long time. Robert remained standing still, as if he could not process what had just happened. Finally he spoke, his voice barely audible. "Dad, I'm sorry. I'm very sorry." Tears began to fall down his cheeks. "I don't know how I let things get so far. I don't know how I stopped seeing you." I wanted to hug him. I wanted to say that everything was fine, but I couldn't. Because it wasn't fine. Nothing was fine. "Robert, your wife pushed me and left me bleeding on the floor, and you defended her in front of everyone on my birthday." My voice broke. "Do you have any idea how I felt?" Robert covered his face with his hands. His shoulders trembled. I know. And I have no excuse. She told me things. She made me feel that the problem was you, that it was you who did not accept it. And I believed him. My God. I believed everything." Edward kept the documents in the folder. "Frank, if you need a restraining order against Valerie, I can help you with that." I refused with my head. I just wanted everything to end. I just wanted peace. For now, I just want her to leave and not come back. The lawyer agreed. "Understood. But if she communicates with you, if she threatens you in any way, call me immediately." He gave me his card, although I already had his number. "I am available for anything." He said goodbye and left, leaving the three of us in the kitchen. Michael broke the silence. "Robert, you need to decide what you're going to do. But whatever it is, your father cannot continue to live with this tension." Robert sat down without raising his eyes. "I know. I need to think. I need to process all this." He looked at his left hand, where his wedding ring shone. He slowly took it off and left it on the table. The sound of metal against wood sounded final, definitive. That night, I could not sleep. I stayed awake in my room with the door closed with a key for the first time in years. My eye was pulsing. The swelling had worsened and the bruise extended to the cheek. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the scene repeat itself. The push, the fall, Valerie's face looking at me on the ground without remorse. And even worse, I saw Robert defending her in front of everyone. Those words resounded in my head over and over again. It was my wife who showed him his place. My own son. My child. How had I come to this point? I heard movement in the house during the night. Steps going and coming, doors opening and closing, voices muted. I did not know if Robert was still there or if he had left with Valerie. Part of me wanted to know. Another part was afraid of the answer. Michael had stayed in the guest room. He had told me that he would not leave me alone that night, that he would stay until he was sure that I was well. His presence gave me some comfort, but I could not erase the pain I felt in my chest. A pain that had nothing to do with physical aggression. When it finally dawned, I carefully went down the stairs. The house was silent. The remains of the party were everywhere. Uninflated balloons on the floor, cups left on the tables, plates with food in between. Everything looked sad under the gray light of dawn. I approached the window of the room. Robert's car was still at the entrance. He was still there. I did not know if this relieved me or anguished me more. Michael appeared at the kitchen door, carrying 2 cups of coffee. He offered me one. "You did not sleep any," he said. It was not a question. The dark circles had to be evident. I could not. I took the cup gratefully. The coffee was hot and strong, exactly what I needed. We sat in silence for a moment. Then Michael spoke. "Edward called me an hour ago. Valerie tried to contact him last night. He wants to negotiate." I looked at him surprised. Negotiate what? Michael made a blunder. He wants money. He says that if we pay him a certain amount, he will sign the divorce without problems and will leave without making a scandal. On the contrary, he threatens to take this to the media. He says he is going to tell that the family is kicking him out. I felt nauseous. Of course he wanted money. He had always been for money. "How much is he asking?" I asked. Michael doubted. $300,000. The amount struck me like a punch. $300,000 was a huge sum, money that I did not have available in cash. I would have to sell investments, maybe get a loan with the house as a guarantee. "I'm not going to pay him anything," I said firmly. "She attacked me. She tried to manipulate my son to steal my house. He doesn't even deserve $1. Michael approved. "That's exactly what I told Edward. He agrees. He says his threats are empty. He has no legal case." We heard footsteps on the stairs. Robert appeared. He looked terrible. Puffy eyes, wrinkled clothes, disheveled hair. He had probably slept as little as I did. He looked at us both cautiously. "Good morning," he said in a hoarse voice. Michael did not answer. I only heard. Robert served coffee with trembling hands. The silence was heavy, uncomfortable. He finally spoke. "Valerie went to a hotel last night. She has been sending me messages all night. He wants us to talk. Let's fix things." Michael sighed. "Fix things after everything he did?" Robert collapsed on a chair. "I know it sounds ridiculous, but she's my wife. We were together for 2 years. I can't just end everything like this." I looked at him disbelievingly. "Robert, she tried to declare me incapable. She investigated how to take my house. She attacked me and left me bleeding. And you want to fix things with her?" My voice rose. "What else do you have to do to open your eyes?" Robert rubbed his face with his hands. "You're right. I know. But it's complicated. I loved her. Or I thought I loved her. I don't know anything anymore." His voice broke. "Everything is so confusing. I thought I knew her. I thought we were happy. And now I discover that everything was a lie. That she just wanted the house. That I was just a means to get what she wanted." Tears began to roll down his cheeks again. "I feel so stupid. So used." Part of me wanted to comfort him. He was my son, after all. But the wound was too fresh, the pain too deep. "Robert, she not only used you, she destroyed me. She turned my house into a place where I felt strange. She made me feel like I was in the way. She humiliated me in front of everyone. And you allowed it. You participated." Robert felt miserable. "Probably. I know. And I will never be able to forgive myself. Will you ever be able to forgive me?" He raised his eyes at me. They were red and swollen. I didn't know what to say. Could I forgive him? Fatherly love doesn't just disappear like that. But trust was broken. Damaged respect. I don't know, Robert. I need time. I need space. I need to heal. My voice sounded tired. And you need to decide what kind of man you want to be. Because the man who defended his wife after he attacked his father is not the son I raised. Michael got up. I'm going to be direct, Robert. You need to leave this house for a while. Your father needs peace. He needs to feel safe in his own home. And now your presence only brings him pain. Robert became pale. Do you want me to leave my childhood home? Michael didn't become silent. This is not your home. It's your father's house. And after what happened yesterday, he has every right to ask you to leave. Robert looked at me, looking for me to contradict him, hoping I would say I could stay. But I didn't. Michael was right. I needed him to leave. I needed to breathe without feeling constant tension. I needed my space. I think it's for the best, I finally said. For now, until things calm down. Robert closed his eyes as if he had been hit. Okay, he whispered. I understand. He got up slowly. I'm going to pack some things. I saw him climb the stairs. His shoulders were bent. He looked defeated. And although part of me felt compassion, the other part, the wounded and betrayed, only felt relief that he left. Michael put his hand on mine. You did the right thing. I felt, although I was not sure of anything. Nothing seemed right at that moment. Half an hour later, Robert came down with 2 suitcases. He stopped at the entrance of the room where I was still sitting. I'm going to stay at a friend's house for a few days until I find an apartment. He paused. Dad, I know this doesn't fix anything, but I need you to know that I'm sorry. I'm very sorry for everything. I was a coward, an evil son. I'm going to have to live with this for the rest of my life. His voice broke. I love you. I got up. I walked towards him. For a moment, we just looked at each other. Then, I did something I hadn't planned. I hugged him. It was a brief, tense hug, full of pain. But it was the only thing I could offer him at that moment. I love you too, I whispered. That's why it hurts so much. We parted. Robert took the suitcases and went out the door. I heard his car start. I heard the sound moving away down the street. And then, the silence filled the house. I let myself fall on the couch. The tears I had been holding back finally came out. I cried for my son, for the relationship we had lost, for the broken trust, for the pain of seeing someone you love choose another person over you, over and over again. Michael sat next to me and hugged me while I cried. He didn't say anything. He just stayed there. Sometimes that's all you need. Someone who is present in your pain without trying to fix it. The following days passed in a strange fog. The house was silent in a way I had never experienced before. It was not the peaceful silence of being alone. It was the silence, heavy with the absence of things that were not said, of broken relationships. I looked at myself in the mirror every morning, and I saw the bruise change color, from dark purple to yellowish green. It was a constant reminder of everything that had happened. A map of pain painted on my face. Michael stayed with me during that first week. He cooked when I had no energy. He answered the phone when I didn't want to talk to anyone. Several people called after the party, some with genuine concern, others with morbid curiosity, disguised as affection. Is what happened true, Frank? Did your daughter-in-law really attack you? Did Robert really defend her? Michael sent them all away with short answers. My brother needs privacy. Thank you for calling. And he hung up without giving more explanations. Robert sent messages every day. At first they were long, full of apologies, full of explanations about how Valerie had manipulated him, about how he now saw everything clearly, about how he wanted to fix things. I read them, but I didn't answer. I didn't know what to say. The words seemed empty. The apologies arrived too late. The damage was already done. As the days went by, the messages became shorter, more desperate. "Dad, please talk to me. I just want to know if you're okay. I miss you." But I continued without answering. I needed silence. I needed space to process everything I had experienced. One afternoon, Edward, the lawyer, came to visit me. He brought news. "Valerie has hired a lawyer," he said, while we were having coffee in the living room. "She's starting the divorce process." I felt a strange mixture of relief and sadness. Relief, because it meant that she would leave our lives. Sadness, because it meant that Robert's marriage had ended in disaster. "What is he asking for?" I asked. Edward made a fuss. "He's asking for compensation for the 2 years of marriage. He claims that he left his job to support Robert, who deserves part of the marital assets." "But Robert has no assets," I said, confused. "Everything he has is in my name. The house, the investments, everything." Edward agreed. "Exactly. That's why his lawyer is trying to argue that Robert has the right to an anticipated inheritance, that you should give him part of your assets so that he can fulfill the divorce obligations." I was speechless. Even now, even after everything, Valerie was still trying to get my money. But now she was using Robert as a legal intermediary. "This isn't going to work, is it?" I asked with a trembling voice. Edward firmly denied with his head. "Absolutely not. There is no mandatory anticipated inheritance. You decide what to do with your assets and when. No one can force you to give anything, much less in these circumstances." I breathed with relief. "Robert knows what she's doing?" Edward shrugged his shoulders. "I'm not sure, but he should know. It's his divorce, after all." That night I sent a message to Robert, the first in a week. "Do you know that Valerie is asking me to give you money to pay her?" The answer came almost immediately. "What? No, I didn't know any of this." Then another message. "Dad, I swear I didn't ask for anything. I don't want your money. I just want to fix things between us." I wanted to believe him. I wanted to think that Robert wasn't part of that plan. But my confidence was so damaged that I didn't know what to believe anymore. 2 more weeks passed. The bruise finally disappeared from my face, but the wound in my heart was still bleeding. Michael had to go back to his job, to his life. He hugged me before leaving. "You're going to be fine," he said. "Frank, you're stronger than you think." I felt, although I didn't feel strong, I felt broken. I felt old. I felt alone. The house seemed even more empty after he left. One afternoon, the doorbell rang. I didn't expect anyone. I looked out the window and saw a young woman I didn't recognize. I opened the door carefully. "Mr. Frank?" she asked with a kind smile. I nodded. "I'm a private investigator. I was hired by his son's lawyer." My heart accelerated. Robert had hired a private investigator. What for? "I was investigating Valerie's financial past," the woman continued, "and I found information that I think you should know." I invited her to come in. We sat in the room. She opened a folder full of documents. Valerie has a history of relationships with older men or widows with properties. Her previous marriage ended when her husband's family discovered that she was falsifying documents to transfer properties to his name. I felt a chill run down my back. "Robert knows this?" The investigator agreed. "He was the one who hired me. When he began to suspect, he wanted to know the truth. And the truth is that Valerie is a professional swindler," he continued. She has gambling debts that exceed $600,000. The sharks are chasing her. That's why she desperately needed this house. Everything began to make sense. The rush to get married, the insistence to move to the house, the constant comments about the value of the property, the investigations about declaring me incapable. It wasn't just ambition. It was desperation. She was running away from debts and saw a way out in Robert, in me, in our house. In addition, the investigator said, she was in contact with real estate agents 3 months before the incident on your birthday. She asked how long it would take to sell a property after the owner was declared inept to make decisions. She had a detailed plan. I covered my mouth with my hand. The horror of what could have happened struck me like a wave. If I had been weaker, if I hadn't had Michael, if Edward hadn't arrived that night with the documents, Valerie could have been successful. She could have taken everything from me, my house, my dignity, my freedom. Robert saw all this? I asked. The investigator said, yes, and he was devastated. That's why she's proceeding with the divorce without any resistance. She wants to get her out of her life as soon as possible. After the investigator left, I sat in silence for a long time, processing everything I had heard. Valerie was worse than I had imagined. She wasn't just an ambitious woman or manipulative. She was a criminal, a predator looking for vulnerable victims. And she almost succeeded. She almost destroyed my life. She almost destroyed my son. The phone rang. It was Robert. I hesitated before answering. I finally did it. Hi, Dad. His voice sounded tired. The investigator went to see you. Yes, I confirmed. There was a long silence. Now you understand why I feel so stupid, so used. I married a swindler and I didn't see the signs. She was good at what she did, I said gently. She deceived us both. Robert sighed. But you saw before me. You tried to warn me and I didn't listen to you. I treated you horribly to defend her. And now I have to live with that. His voice broke. Will you ever be able to forgive me? The question was floating between us. I closed my eyes. I thought about all my pain, humiliation, betrayal, but I also thought about the good years, about the child I had raised, about the man I could become again if I learned from this. I don't know if I can forgive you now, I said honestly, but I want to try. With time, with space, with therapy maybe. I heard Robert sigh as if he were holding his breath. I also want to try, Dad. I want to get our relationship back. I want to be the son I deserve to be. The son Mom would have wanted me to be. Tears began to roll down my cheeks. Your mother would be disappointed with what happened, I said. But she would also believe in second chances. I always believed in them. We talked a little more cautiously, carefully, like two people who have known each other for a long time and are trying to recognize each other again. When we hung up, I felt strangely light. It wasn't complete forgiveness. It wasn't total reconciliation. But it was a beginning. A small crack in the wall that had built up between us. And for now, that was enough. The following months were slow healing. Like when you break a bone and you have to patiently wait for it to heal, knowing that maybe it will never be exactly as it was before. Robert and I would meet once a week, always in public places. A neighborhood cafeteria, a park, places where we both felt safe. The first encounters were uncomfortable. Long pauses between words. Gazes that couldn't be held. But little by little, very slowly, we began to find something similar to what we had lost. Robert began therapy. He told me one afternoon while we were drinking coffee. The therapist says I was a victim of psychological abuse, he said, looking at his cup. Valerie used classic manipulation techniques: isolation, gaslighting, gradual control. She took a break. But that doesn't excuse me, Dad. I also made decisions. I chose to believe her instead of you. I chose to ignore the signals. And that's something I have to carry. I felt he was right. Being a victim didn't erase the consequences of her actions. The divorce process was long and ugly. Valerie fought for every point. She asked for compensation for time invested. She asked for emotional damage. She even asked for the clothes Robert had given her. Her lawyer sent letter after letter, threat after threat. But Edward was relentless. He presented all the evidence of the investigator, the documents on her debts, the records of her searches on how to declare people incapable, her previous marriages, and fraud patterns. Eventually, Valerie's lawyer advised her to accept a quick and clean deal, or she would face criminal charges. One afternoon, Edward called me with news. "Valerie is done," he said. "The divorce is over. She doesn't receive anything except her personal belongings, and there is a permanent restriction order. She can't get close to Robert or you, less than 200 yards. I felt a huge weight lifting from my shoulders. She had left. She really had left. "Where is she now?" I asked. Edward doubted. "From what I understand, she left the state, probably running away from her creditors. But that is no longer our problem." Robert moved to a small apartment. He invited me to see him on a Saturday. It was modest, a bedroom, basic furniture, nothing luxurious. But it looked clean, tidy. There were family photos on the walls, photos of when he was a child, photos with Eleanor, photos of me before everything crumbled. "I'm starting again," he told me while he was making coffee. "Without pretensions, without living beyond my possibilities, just me, working, healing." He showed me his space with a certain shy pride. He was a different man to whom he had defended Valerie that horrible night. But the real proof arrived months later. It was a quiet Sunday. Robert came to visit me at home for the first time since he had left. He walked around the house slowly, touching the walls, looking at the photos, remembering. When we got to the kitchen, he stopped. "It was here where everything exploded," he said softly. "It was here where Uncle Michael told me that Mom would be ashamed of me." His eyes were filled with tears. And he was right. Mom would be ashamed. I am ashamed. We sat at the table, the same table where we had shared thousands of meals. "Dad, I need to tell you something," Robert began. "And I need you to listen to me until the end." I listened. He took a deep breath. "I have been working with the therapist on responsibility, on hiding behind excuses, and I realized something." He paused. "Valerie manipulated me, yes, but I let her do it because deep down, a part of me wanted this house. I wanted what Mom had built, and that made it easier for her to manipulate me." I stayed silent, letting him continue. "When she suggested things about you, about how difficult or outdated you were, I did not stop her. Why? Because a small, selfish part of me thought that if you left, the house would be mine. Not consciously, not actively, but the seed was there." Tears rolled down her cheeks now. "And that is why I am as guilty as she is. Because my ambition, my greed, allowed all this to happen." It was painful to hear it, but it was also necessary. It was the raw truth that we had been avoiding. "I appreciate your honesty," I finally said. "And you are right. Valerie could not have manipulated you if she had not found something in you to hold on to." Robert sighed miserably. "I know, and that is why I do not expect you to forgive me completely. I do not expect things to be like before. I just hope to be able to show you in time that I am better than my worst decisions." I extended my hand through the table. He took it. "Robert, your mother and I raised you to be a good man, and good men make mistakes. Big mistakes sometimes. But they also learn. They also grow. They also redeem themselves." I squeezed his hand. "I am not going to lie and say that everything is fine, because it is not. But I am willing to walk with you while you work to be better. That is all I can offer you now." Robert sighed, got up and hugged me. A long hug. A hug that asked for forgiveness without words. I hugged him back. My child, my broken son, but trying to rebuild. "I love you, Dad," he whispered. "I'm sorry. I'm very sorry. Everything." I cried with him for everything we had lost, for everything we could still recover, for the long way we still had ahead. After that day, something changed between us. It was as if we had finally cleaned the wound. It hurt, it burned, but now it could begin to heal, truly. Robert began to come more often. Not too much. He did not try to force things, but every week, every month, we rebuilt a little more of the bridge between us. We ate together occasionally. He fixed things that broke in the house. I cooked his favorite dishes, as before. One day he told me that he had met someone, a woman from his job. Hope. He told me with a shy smile. She is different from Valerie in every way. She is honest, transparent. She has her own apartment, her own car, her own life. She doesn't need anything from me except company. He took a break. And this time I'm going slow. This time I'm paying attention to the signals. This time I'm going to listen to you if you see something that I don't see. I smiled. I would like to meet her when you are ready, without pressure. The months became a year, then 2. The anniversary of that horrible birthday party came and went. This time we celebrate only Robert, Michael, and me. Something small, intimate, calm. I blew the candles of my cake and Robert hugged me. "Happy birthday, Dad. I love you." And this time when he said those words, I felt them true. I felt them real. I felt them deserved. The house remained mine, my refuge, my fortress, but it didn't look like a prison of painful memories anymore. It looked like a home again. A place where the storm had survived. A place where I had found my strength when I thought I had none left. The old curtains that Eleanor had chosen hung again on the windows. The furniture that Valerie had moved returned to their original places. Each corner became mine again. And although the pain of what had happened never completely disappeared, I learned something important. I learned that protecting myself didn't make me selfish. I learned that setting limits didn't make me cruel. I learned that sometimes the greatest love you can give is to refuse to be destroyed, even if that means temporarily letting go of someone you love. Because only by staying whole can you be there when they are finally ready to rebuild. 2 years after that horrible night, I was in the garden of my house, pruning the roses that Eleanor had planted decades ago. The early morning sun was warm on my back. The flowers had blossomed spectacularly this season. Reds, yellows, peach-colored, each one more beautiful than the previous one. There was something therapeutic about taking care of those plants, about seeing how something that seemed dead in winter could be reborn with such strength in spring. I heard a car stop in front of the house. It was Robert, but he wasn't alone. A woman came out of the passenger's side. Hope. I had met her 6 months earlier at a casual dinner. She was a primary school teacher. She had a genuine smile and kind eyes. And most importantly, she treated Robert like an equal. She didn't flatter him. She didn't manipulate him. She simply accompanied him in his life in a healthy and balanced way. "Hi, Dad." Robert greeted me with a kiss on the cheek. Hope hugged me warmly. "Mr. Frank, the roses are beautiful." I smiled. "Thank you, my dear. Your help last month made the difference." We entered the house. I had prepared food: beef stew with rice and fresh salad. We sat down at the table, the same table where so many things had happened. But now the bad memories were being replaced by new and better ones. We ate, speaking of trivialities, Robert's work, Hope's students, the garden flowers. It was normal. It was peaceful. It was what it should have always been. After eating, Robert and I went out to the porch. We sat down at the table that Eleanor had set. "Dad, I need to tell you something," Robert finally said. My heart accelerated for a moment. Robert must have noticed because he quickly added, "It's something good, I promise you." I breathed with relief. "All right, tell me." Robert turned to look at me. "I asked Hope to marry me, and she said yes." My first instinct was joy, but fear immediately came. The memories of Valerie. Robert read my expression. "I know what you're thinking, and I understand it. After Valerie, I was also afraid. But Dad, Hope is different. Completely different," he continued. "She knows everything that happened. I told her about Valerie, about how I treated you, about the divorce, everything. And she didn't run away," he added. "And there's something else. She insisted that we sign a prenuptial agreement. She doesn't want any of my future assets if things don't work." This surprised me and gave me hope. "When is the wedding?" Robert smiled. "We haven't set a date yet, but before planning anything, I needed your blessing. Hope said she wouldn't marry me if you weren't comfortable, that your opinion is important, that the family is built on mutual respect." I felt tears in my eyes. "You have my blessing," I said with an excited voice. "Hope is a good woman. I can see that." Robert hugged me. "Thank you, Dad. This means everything to me." Then he added something else. "Dad, about this house, I want you to know that I will never, ever ask you to leave it. This is your house, your home, and it will be until the day you decide otherwise. Hope and I are going to build our own life in our own space. We don't need and we don't want this house." Those words released something in me that I didn't know I was holding back. Hope left the porch. "Did you tell her?" she asked with a smile. Robert sat down. She approached and sat on the floor in front of my rocking chair. "Mr. Frank, I know I have big shoes to fill. I want you to know that I deeply respect everything that happened, and that if you ever feel that I'm crossing a line, I hope you tell me directly, without fear." I looked her in the eyes. They were sincere, clear. "Thank you for saying that, Hope, and please call me Frank." She smiled broadly. "Only if you call me daughter when you feel ready." My heart tightened. Daughter. I had a daughter-in-law who used that title as a weapon. Could I have another? "I would like that," I finally said. "I would like it very much, daughter." Hope got up and hugged me. A genuine hug, without calculations behind. Robert was watching us with tears in his eyes. His family, fragmented and broken, was finding a way to heal. The following months were preparation for the wedding. This time I participated. Hope consulted me every decision, not because she needed my approval, but because she genuinely valued my opinion. The wedding was held in a beautiful place on the outskirts of Atlanta. Small, intimate, only close family, and true friends. When Robert and Hope exchanged vows, I cried. But they were tears different from those I had shed 2 years earlier. At the reception, Michael sat next to me. "How do you feel?" he asked me. I thought about his question. In peace? I finally answered. For the first time in a long time, I feel peace. Michael smiled and raised his glass. For peace, for healing, for the endings that are actually new beginnings. Let's toast. Around us, people laughed, danced, celebrated. And I was there, part of it, no longer invisible, no longer displaced. That night, back in my house, I sat in the living room. The house was silent, but it didn't feel empty. It felt full of good and bad memories, full of learned lessons, full of second chances. I looked at Eleanor's photo on the fireplace. We did it, I said out loud. I even protected our son when that meant letting him go. And now I think we're going to be okay. I got up and walked around the house. Each room had a story. The kitchen, where Valerie and I had our final confrontation. The living room, where he had been humiliated in front of everyone. But also the table, where Robert and I had begun to rebuild our relationship. The porch, where he had received his petition of blessing. The garden, where Eleanor's roses bloomed every year without fail. This house had witnessed my worst moment, but also my greatest strength. Here I had learned that protecting myself wasn't selfishness, that setting limits wasn't cruelty, that sometimes the greatest love you can give is denying yourself to be destroyed, because only by staying whole can you be there when the people you love finally wake up, when they finally choose to be better. I went up to my room. I looked at myself in the mirror. 72 years. Lines on my face that told stories. Eyes that had seen pain, but also redemption. You survived, I said. More than that, you won. Not with revenge, not with hatred, but by remaining true to who you are. I lay down in my bed, in my house, in my refuge that no one could take away from me. Sometimes protecting the past is saving the future. Eleanor knew it when she wrote that clause in the will. She knew I would need protection, and she gave me the tools to defend myself even after her death. Thanks to that, I was able to stay firm. I was able to say no. I was able to demand respect in my own house. And eventually, that firmness saved not only my home, but also my son. I closed my eyes, feeling gratitude. Gratitude for having survived, for having healed, for having a second chance with Robert, for knowing hope, for having Michael's unconditional support. Life had hit me hard. It had shown me the dark side of people I loved. But it had also shown me my own strength. A strength I didn't know I had until I desperately needed it. This house is still mine. These keys that Valerie coveted so much remain in my power, not because they represent money or status, but because they represent something much more valuable. My autonomy, my right to exist in my own space without asking permission, my freedom to live without fear, and that no one can ever take away from me. A year later, Robert and Hope came to visit me on a Sunday afternoon. Hope was 6 months pregnant, radiant, carrying my future grandson or granddaughter. We sat in the garden under the shade of the walnut tree that Eleanor and I had planted when Robert was little. The circle was completed. "Grandpa Frank?" Hope asked tenderly. "Grandpa Frank?" A new title, a new opportunity, a new generation that would grow up knowing this story, not as a tragedy, but as a testimony that it is possible to survive, heal, and love again. "Grandpa Frank is perfect," I said, feeling how my heart was filled with a happiness that I had not felt in years. Robert took my hand. "Dad, I want you to know that this child will grow up knowing the story of his grandfather. He will know that strong men are not the ones who never fall, but the ones who get up. he will know that true love includes protecting oneself. Hope felt and will know that his great-grandmother Eleanor was a very wise woman who protected her family even after leaving. I looked at the house, towards the windows where the curtains that Eleanor had chosen hung again, towards the walls that had resisted all the storms. This house had been my battlefield, but also my victory. Here I had learned that dignity is not something that others give you. It is something that you decide to keep. I had learned that true respect is not begged. It is earned by staying firm in your principles. I had learned that sometimes loving means letting go, and that sometimes letting go is the only way that someone can really come back to you. The sun began to set, painting the sky with oranges and roses. In a few months, there would be a new baby in this family, a new life that would grow with the blessing of having been born in a family that had learned to value respect, honesty, and true love. Robert got up and hugged me. Thank you, Dad, for not giving up, for not letting them destroy us, for teaching me that it is possible to be strong and loving at the same time. I hugged him back, my son, my man, my child who had grown through pain to become someone better. Thank you, I told him, for being willing to learn, to grow, to be better. Hope embraced us both, and for a moment, we were what we should always be, a family united not by the tragedies that we had endured, but by the love that we had chosen to rebuild. That night, while the house was silent again, I sat down one last time in my living room, looking at the family photos that had survived everything. Eleanor and I, the day of our wedding. Robert, baby. Happy moments that no Valerie in the world could erase. And now, new photos. Robert and Hope at their wedding. Moments of reconciliation. Images of a future that was built on solid foundations. Did you like my story? I asked, imagining all the people who may need to hear that it is possible to survive family betrayal, that it is possible to maintain dignity in the midst of chaos, that it is possible to love without allowing yourself to be destroyed. This story was not only mine. It was of all those who had once felt invisible in their own home, of all those who had had to choose between maintaining peace and maintaining their dignity, of all those who had learned that protecting oneself is not selfishness, it is survival. And from somewhere, I'm sure that Eleanor was smiling, knowing that her plan had worked, that her love had protected me even after her departure, and that our family had found the way back home.